Well, welcome to our second annual Women in Technology panel. I was hoping that this room would be overflowing. So the one action item, last year it feels like we had more, and by the way, I really appreciate all the men that came too. Thank you for your support as well. Next year, what we're going to say is everybody has to bring 3 friends. How about that? So we're going to make this hopefully as informative as we possibly can, a little upbeat and lighthearted to some degree, but at the same time we want to be serious about the topic, and hopefully you all can walk away and say there's some things that you've taken from this and learned that you can apply moving forward. What I'm going to do, instead of me introducing everyone, I'm going to tell you who I am, and then I'm going to let each panelist sort of introduce themselves and tell you just a little bit about themselves, okay? So my name's Teresa Carlson, and I am at AWS, Amazon Web Services. I've been here almost 5 years, and I run a group called Worldwide Public Sector. And I'm really excited about having each and every one of you here. And one of my wishes and goals is to, again, triple this audience, quadruple it, and make it so big we all can't fit into any room that we have here. So with that, I'll turn it over to our next panel member.
My name is Eva Say. I work at Netflix, and I have been at Netflix for over 6 years. I manage the big data platform team at Netflix. Basically, my team do all the data analytics and ETL process that is done across the whole Netflix company. So that's me. And before that, I came from a streaming startup. And before that, I worked at Informatica, which is a data warehousing company. So Netflix, this current position is the best combination that I could get.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Isco. I am the Chief Technology Officer at a company called Medidata Solutions. I am responsible for all of the technology there. That includes the infrastructure and AWS. It also includes the engineering and product, and all of the technical support, customer care, security, et cetera. So anything technology is an area of my responsibility. I was born and bred and educated and employed in the San Francisco Bay Area my entire life up until the last 6 months. And I moved to New York City to take this job. Prior to that, I was a CIO at a company in the Bay Area, and it was in the consumer-directed healthcare space. And prior to that, I was in the semiconductor industry doing engineering leadership and engineering roles for about a decade. So that is history in a nutshell.
My name is Mai-Lan Bukovic. Hi, everyone. I'm the general manager for Amazon S3, so I run product management, engineering, and operations for the object storage service for Amazon Web Services. I've been at Amazon now for a little over 5 years, and I am very excited to be here. I think this topic is very important in the technical space.
So a couple of quick things so we don't go way over time. Can somebody start our clock back there so the 45 minutes starts going down, or we could go 45 minutes plus. So let me tell you what we're going to cover today. Today we're going to talk about increased productivity, the sort of 4 areas that we think diversity across the workplace may do: increase productivity, increase creativity and problem solving, help attract and retain talent, and better represent your customer base. We're also going to talk to you. How many of you were here last year? Great. Okay, fantastic. We're going to talk to you about our hashtag #SmartIsBeautiful. We're going to give you a little update on that. And there's a few stats I want to talk to you about. Most recently, a research group found that in overwhelming numbers, respondents were clear that diversity helps bring in a number of ways. It helps create a workplace that is more inclusive. And in the latest Economist, it found that shifting from all male or all female office to one split evenly among gender lines could increase revenues by roughly 41%. A 2012 Credit Suisse report found that companies with women directors outperform those without women directors in return on equity, average growth, and price book value multiples. A 2013 Thomson Reuters report concluded that on average, companies with no women on their boards underperformed relative to gender diverse boards and had slightly higher tracking errors indicating potentially more volatile risk. So these are just some examples that I wanted to give you that really does say having a diverse workplace really does increase productivity and overall value. So with that, what I'd like to start with our panelists, and I'll start with Julie. Julie, have you found that diversity among your teams benefits the outcome of productivity of all the teams?
Of course.
Why is that?
Whenever you bring people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different cultural environments, upbringings, and it could be different technical skills, it could be different education, they come to the table with different approaches, different ways to solve problems, different viewpoints, and you end up with much more comprehensive view of things and ways to get things done and ways to solve problems. So on a very practical level, it broadens your pool of which to pull solutions and desired outcomes from.
That makes sense. Eva, what about for you?
For my team specifically, it's an all-men team.
It's all-men team.
Until recently, we actually hired a female engineer.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy about it. So, but in general, what I observe is like in the bigger cloud platform team at Netflix, we actually was pretty dominant by men. And recently we hired more women engineers in the team, and it definitely changed the dynamics in discussions when we are having design meetings about different problems. It brings out the different aspects of what women are like good for. For example, I don't want to stereotype, but for example, the team were more leaning towards actions in the past, and we are more analytical. We think through stuff better. It's just bring out a different dynamics, more ideas, and people tend to actually have more different, they're more open to different ideas now, and people are actually, in the team, are actually more productive. So in the end, it's a good outcome, and with the new female engineers in my team, I'm hoping that it would actually help diversify the opinions in the team, the things that we do, and has more dynamic discussion.
After, I want Mai-Lan to answer, but then I want to come back to you and I'll give you something to think about. How did you find the talent? I want you to talk about a little bit in a minute how you found the talent, the cloud talent for women too.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about diversity, I think you touched on it very well, Julie and Ava, which is the voice, right? A more diverse voice. So, women, I think, bring a lot of creative ideas and sometimes a certain way of thinking to a technical problem or a business problem. But I think there's another benefit that I see as well, which is it helps train the people around those women too to listen better. Mm-hmm. So when people get better at listening, because they have to work with a diverse workforce and they don't have a kind of a monoculture of how people just end up talking, then they get their ear trained. And then you have a multiplier effect, because then you have people who go and make it easier and more welcoming for other women, or frankly any diversity profile, to feel more accepted and more heard. And so I think there's this multiplier effect that you get when you start to introduce women into a technical workforce, because it trains the people around them to develop that ear.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And based on that, I think it's always about how do you then attract talent, women leaders who are talented in the technology workspace, and then how do you keep them? How do you retain them? So talk a little bit. You sort of started saying that just recently you hired some women.
Yeah.
How did you find them? How did you get them? Everybody wants cloud talent, and especially women with cloud talent.
Yeah, so for that specific example, we found her at a conference. So we met her at the Hadoop Summit conference, and we followed through. Normally, when we talked to her, we found that, hey, she's really concerned about being in a male-dominant organization. How does it work? So I spent some extra time to explain to her about the environment at Netflix, the culture that we have, which is she has 2 kids, so she's a little bit concerned about work-life balance. So I explained to her about Netflix culture, which is very freedom and responsibility. Actually, that's working towards us, not against us, because we have the power to exercise the freedom to balance work-life. It's not based on the number of hours you work. And I sort of explained some of the events that we are having for women at Netflix events that we do, and sort of walk her through those things that we have. And ultimately, I think she felt like this is a good environment for her, and she decided to join. But in general, we actually do a lot of events, which we could cover later, to attract women talent. And there are a lot of women leaders in the Netflix product team are pretty active and take point on different activities to do that. And we share networks on how to approach these.
How long did you say you've been at Netflix?
6.5 years.
So you really have a good sense of what would make someone stay, and it sounds like you're really trying to impart what you've already learned and mentor someone to say, look, this actually is a really great environment, and here's how you can adjust to it. But you're also getting into the mentoring aspect of how you really sort of coach somebody. This is how this environment works, and I think that's actually really cool, because that's going to be part of the retaining them.
Yes.
You got to get them, and then how do you really retain them to stay?
So getting them through the door is one thing. There are things that we need to do to include them, right? We need to be inclusive so that they don't feel like, oh, I get through the door, and what you said at the beginning is true, but then when they go to meetings, they observe that they're not being heard. So there are things that we do to make sure their voices are being heard, much like what Mai-Lan is saying.
That's a very good point. Julie, are there things that you've done specifically now in your new role or previously to attract more women in your work environment and retain them?
Sure. I mean, it is a challenge. It's a challenge hiring and finding and hiring good tech talent, period. And when you put the diversity into the mix, it's just, it's really challenging. Our HR team has really stepped it up, though, put a lot of focus on it and intensity. So we go to, special hiring events aimed at, bringing in diverse workforce. We post in locations where diverse workforce people will be looking for those jobs. We have a great internship program, significant internship program, where we bring large numbers of students in, and we actually recruit for that, and we're able to pair them up with someone to mentor them through, and they actually work on great tech projects, and they see what our environment is like. But I think it's even more than that. You need to push on your recruiters, on your retained search firms. You need to push to have them hire for diversity. And it's women, and it's cultural diversity as well. And in some cases, for leadership, we will specify 75% of the candidates need to be women or diverse backgrounds. But you really need to make an effort to do it. Seeking them out at conferences, word of mouth, referrals, things like that are really important. But just driving it and making a point to do it is very important.
It sounds like you all have sort of put a line in the sand, though, saying we are going to interview and look for this percentage of the candidates. We've got to bring that into the pipeline. So
in some cases, for certain positions, yes, and encourage it in leadership positions especially.
That's great. I know Mai-Lan is doing a lot, but Mai-Lan, Mai-Lan runs a very technical group, and talk about what you're doing. You're doing some really fun things, actually. You're trying to recruit, but you're also doing some fun things to retain. So maybe you can also start off by talking a little bit more about the retaining side as well.
Well, just taking it from the recruiting side, I think you do have to be very intentional about finding technical women, and it is hard. But for me, I think it's actually very rewarding to go to the universities. So one of the things that I did last year is I went to give a talk at Carnegie Mellon, which has an outstanding computer science program, just outstanding program, and it has a very high percentage of women in the computer science program. And so when I went out there and I gave a talk on Amazon S3, I was talking to some of the advisors, and I'm like, how did you do this? I mean, it was like 40% women for the computer science class that I was talking to. And they said it was because they have so many of the advisors who are PhD women that you just have this kind of a grouping effect where more women come, they see a community, they're comfortable talking to an advisor, particularly if the women are coming from a culture where it's very uncomfortable for them to interact with men. So creating sort of a more welcoming environment was really transformational to gender with Carnegie Mellon. And so when we do recruiting, we like to work with these universities that do a great job themselves. And then again, you just have this effect where these women have different job opportunities, and they can come from that environment of computer science into the workplace. Now, if the workplace doesn't support it, then that's not so good either. So one of the things that we did, and for those of you who attended the panel last year, I think I mentioned that we run a peer mentoring circle for women. And there was a lot of interest in that. Do you remember that? We had so many people coming up afterwards and talking about it, that this year what we've done is we've actually done a breakout session on how to run a technical diversity circle, and it's right after this session. It's at 5:30 in Murano 320 something. You guys will have to look it up, I can't remember. But the leader of our mentoring circle, Amy Tyrion, who's a senior software manager on the Amazon S3 substrate, is going to be presenting on how S3 has developed a technical mentoring environment for women of all stages in their career. And we're trying to do it in the AWS way that we do at reInvent, which is make it a truly detailed session. You know, what topics did we cover? How did we set it up? What were the do's and don'ts? And what were the best practices? And the reason why we did this is because of the interest we got last year, and because we actually want you in the audience to think to yourself, whether you are a man or a woman, what can I do to go back to my company and set up a peer mentoring circle? And we'll talk about how easy it is. There's a lot of resources out there, and I tell you, if you go up to your manager and you say, you know, I want to do this and I want to have a little bit of budget for some lunches, they will probably say yes, because you will go and take a blueprint of something that has worked for us, you'll change it for the culture and nature of your mentoring group, and then hopefully be able to provide that supporting environment for women in your workplace.
All right, did everybody hear that? Very actionable. We're providing you something super actionable this year. We're going to have this panel, then you are going to have the opportunity to learn how to create a diversity circle in your workplace. So, and if you're not able to attend that, we'll make sure that we make the slides available and figure out if maybe we can even do something more virtually and at some of our other summits. But
Well,
Mai-Lan,
Teresa, you know what I would love to have? I would love, I mean, you've been through many of these sessions at reInvent. You know at reInvent, we want customers on stage. You are here so you can learn from others. You are not here so we can talk to you about all the different things of our services. We're going to do that too, but you're really here to learn from others. And what I would love to have is a session next year where some of you in the audience come back to us and you present how these diversity circles worked in your workspace. So that's my challenge out to the audience. I would love for that to
in fact, we'll make a commitment that we'll set up and have you submit even prior to reInvent so we can start telling some of the stories, and then we'll make that available. And I see, Julie, I think you tell us.
I was just going to say, I think those mentoring programs can be very effective if they're done in the right way, but I also think proactive informal mentoring is incredibly valuable, and I found it even more so and more impactful in that, I wouldn't say more, but differently impactful. Men are so good at informal mentoring. They go out for drinks, they go to sporting events, and a lot of things happen. Women are not included, and they do a lot of talking about strategy, giving one another feedback in those informal sessions. And doing that, when you see it can make a difference, whether someone's just come out of a meeting and you see that they could have done something more effectively, or they've done something well and it really made a difference, just giving them on-the-spot feedback is really important. So pulling someone out to lunch or explaining to them how to navigate through certain things or areas where it's important to focus on one thing versus another, it can really be impactful for someone. You can watch changes occur from people, and I think it's really...
That makes sense. I think you're a good point. I wanted to point out, we talked a minute ago that we're going to give an update on hashtag #SmartIsBeautiful, And I wanted to share with the audience that this year, I've been in 5 different cities that we've done women's circles around the world. I'm looking at one of my account executives out here in Australia that set that up for me twice. He did all the legwork, brought in amazing women, and we had amazing dialogue, but it was not me that I had to lead there and say, keep this going, and they have kept it going. Brad and the team have kept it going. I was just in Colombia, and we had an amazing group of 30 executive women, and we had a really rich dialogue about what could each and every individual do to create momentum to get young girls excited about technology. And they all had great ideas of what they were going to do, and they were from very different backgrounds, but all doing tech within their large enterprises or governments. And what I found so interesting is, believe it or not, about 10 to 15% of the women told me that they had never, ever been invited or done anything like that before ever in their careers. And it really blew my mind. So I wanted to share that because as I go around the world and I meet with amazing women doing amazing things, what I've found is that sometimes they actually haven't put themselves together to do problem solving. And it's not about complaining. So remember, the big thing about hashtag smart is beautiful, there's no complaints allowed. It's about proactive, actionable things that you can do to get young girls excited about being in technology. So we say it's a no complaint zone because when you start having the complaints with young women, it turns them off. So you've got to have a no complaint zone and share the really great things about being in tech and what the career could be like, because we got to get them excited and motivated. But the reason I want to tell you that story as we go on is if each and every one of you take this opportunity to create a circle within your community and say, what can you do, whether it's diversity in your work environment or that you want to get young girls excited about being in technology, it's really, it's a proactive, very tangible, sort of even metric-driven thing you can do and then sort of track your results. And with that, talk a little bit about what you do more actionable at Netflix to make these sort of move forward in the right way.
Yeah, so actually we do a bunch of external events, right? Actually, this is the 3rd year that we are doing or hosting a Women in Tech meetup. Okay. It's actually coming up October 27th. If any of you are in the Bay Area interested, let me know. And it's an invite-only event. We invite external women leaders to talk about their stories, how they are successful in their career. Yeah. And this is the 3rd year we do it, and we are evolving the formats. So in the past, we do breakout group discussion. This year, probably we would do just the keynote type presentation, and then we'll have social hours. So we're evolving it. Yeah. That's one. I myself actually also involved in helping. Well, I did one presentation at an organization called Hack Right in San Francisco. It's a nonprofit organization, and they actually do a 10-week program for girls and women who want to get into tech. And they do a 10-week program, and then they would actually interview for different jobs at different companies in the Bay Area. So I did a presentation over there to sort of explain what I do. Yeah. And they also allow people to do mentoring as well. So
how do you get the word out for these events? Like, what's your model for getting the word out?
So at Netflix, we actually have a Women at Netflix group that all the women can participate. We meet quarterly. And in the last meeting, we actually brainstorm on what we could do as a group, and it's a very organic way of meeting and coming up with ideas. Mm-hmm. And different women who participate in that meetup actually take points on doing different activities. For example, we're going to do some mentoring pairing, but we let it happen organically. People sign up on Google Doc and pair themselves. We do Toastmasters group. I don't know where that is going yet. I'm not part of that. And then there is There's book clubs, and there are things that we do organically as well, so that women at Netflix can come together and think of things that we could do together. And we actually just last month also did an open house for high school girls to come into Netflix and meet a bunch of women leaders. We have sort of like showcased some of the portions of the stuff that we do at different part of the companies, and also they can ask us questions on how it is like in the STEM field. So yeah, we're trying to do it in a very organic fashions and trying to do different things and see what works.
What works.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, I wish I could have shown you all at my Worldwide Public Sector Summit this year. We interviewed a 7-year-old young girl on stage who's actually doing coding. And is in a school in New York, and she was so cute. And I'm sorry, we should have shown you the video clip because it's probably one of the highlights of my career, of getting a young 7-year-old who was so sweet and dynamic and was so confident. And we had about 3,800 people, and she went through what STEM meant. I said, "What does S stand for?" And she said, "Science." And what does T? Technology. And then she so eloquently told me each class she was taking under each one, what her class, and then she talked about doing loops and making Elsa dance with the Frozen. And she was really adorable, and it was interesting because I talked to her father just recently, and he said it motivated her so much. All she can talk about is having a career in tech. And I thought, well, maybe the idea is we get more young women on stage just so they can talk about what they're doing, like, say you're going to get to talk about it. So speaking of that, Mai-Lan, you've done such a good job, I think, at AWS in the role you're in with trying to, I see you a lot in the teams that you run and how well you create that environment. Could you talk to the group a little bit about maybe 1 or 2 examples of how you see within your very technical environment that diversity, how it takes shape and really does change the way both men and women are thinking as you're creating your service roadmap, as an example?
Yeah, so, let me just sort of take a step back and kind of share how I think about diversity. I don't really think about it a lot of times as diversity. I think about it as human potential. And the way I look at an organization is that in that organization, there is a ton of human potential. And in some cases, that human potential is being explored. It's very obvious, and there are no issues because that person is so confident and so capable that they are allowing their potential to basically carry them through their career. And then I have other cases where I'll look at the human potential in my organization and I'll say, it's being held back. And it can be held back for different reasons. It can be held back for cultural reasons. It can be held back because of gender. It can be held back because of something as simple as personality. There are a lot of introverts out there who are very, very smart. And sometimes that capability of their intellect and their creativity isn't coming out because they are shy and they lack confidence. So for me, diversity is really more of a human potential and issue. And what I do is I try to create different programs to go and try to tap the human potential. So the mentoring circle is one where I noticed, the moral equivalence there was an equivalence class of a set of women who had a ton of potential and needed a safe place in a group to go and explore that. And then I created a leadership development series for my management team because there was a lot of potential there, and I wanted to go explore that. So,
talk about one thing you've done in the leadership. Can you give the audience one idea within that leadership? I know you've done some sort of interesting role playing, and could you talk about one thing that maybe does help women on the role playing side that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that I think is really important about developing that human potential is to give, particularly women, a chance to role play it in a safe setting. And the way that I do that is I think very carefully about this because a lot of times, especially when you're working in a fast-paced technology environment, you don't have a lot of head space, right? I mean, you've got sprints going on, you got meetings, you got deadlines, you got this, you got that. You've got Julie who flew in last night just for today to be on this panel. And you don't have a lot of time to just sit and think and, frankly, practice. So if any of you out there do sports, you don't just grow up and like instantly know how to do a sport. You have to practice it to get good at it. So a lot of the training that we like to do either in the women mentoring circles or the leadership development circle is more role-playing, situational based, and it's an hour of headspace to just practice it in a safe environment. And I think if you can do that and you can do it in a regular way so it's not a one-time thing, then people start, getting comfortable a little bit, saying, you know what, it's okay if this last week was totally crazy, because next week I have one of those sessions coming up, and I know for an hour I'm going to think and I'm going to work on something that I'm not very good at, but it's going to be okay to work on it with a group of people who will help me.
Mm-hmm. So Julie, talk about some of the ways that you do this. Like what are some ways that you actually create that headspace, that you provide an environment, and I call it find a hole and fill it, give a woman an opportunity to do something that she actually didn't think she could do potentially?
Well, a lot of it is, as I said, the proactive informal mentoring and making sure that they feel confident in the space they're in. So I really think the one-on-one is helpful. It's direct and it gives feedback to them individually. But I also think we need to, with respect to, it isn't just the women themselves, it is the team around them and the men in the environment, and ensuring that they are respectful and understand the environment that they need to provide as well to foster things. And it's leading by example, and it is working with the teams in general to explain all this. It's not just the women and how they behave, but it's an awareness in the room from all aspects, from all people in it. So I really think sometimes bringing in either getting professional training for managers makes a difference. Mm-hmm. Those kinds of things can help, just an awareness in the room.
Yeah.
So,
well, and we tend to, at AWS, we're growing so fast, we hire a lot of people, put them into roles and say, figure out how to do that.
Exactly.
We're moving fast, just go learn how to do that, and then come back and tell us if you have questions. And I think it's a good point to always recognize not everyone's going to come back to you and say, I'm not sure I know how to do that. So, and they'll sort of stumble around. So, Eva, I'm going to change topics just for a minute. Can you talk a little bit about what you look for in talent? I'd like the audience to sort of understand. I know this is not just, of course, exclusive to women, but understanding what are you looking for when you're interviewing and really trying to bring in the right talent?
So in terms of diversity, so first of all, we are now more explicit to look for a more diverse pool of talent from different sources.
Yeah.
What we're looking for is definitely diversity of thoughts. Mm-hmm. We look for people who could actually think and analyze the situation, even if it takes a little time for them to think about it. Mm-hmm. I think it's good to actually be inclusive.
Yeah.
What we notice is different engineers have different styles. Some are more practical, some are more looking for the perfect design, and it's just that you need to challenge them in a different way to understand that, hey, what would they work in our environment? We certainly want people who can solve a problem in different ways and be flexible, so these are the things that we usually look for. And in terms of hiring a diverse workforce, I think still eventually is merit-based. We don't want to hire somebody because they are women or because they are in an ethnic group that we don't have, but we need to be mindful of that because they are from a different culture. There are certain characters, like it is a potential, but it's something that we might not see immediately, and we need to be able to understand that and just be more inclusive in the interview process and understand that.
And I think something you said was really important. What we're struggling with is just the pipeline. Like one of the things I think that's interesting that we're talking about is diversity in the workplace, but if there's not enough diversity, like where do you get the pipeline from? Mm-hmm. And the thing that I believe all of us in the room have to be really aware of, it's going to take a lot of work to create the right kind of pipeline for diversity. And I'll go back to the hashtag Smart is Beautiful. That's really about how do we create a sustaining long-term pipeline of diversity in technology, in tech companies. I mean, we've all seen the numbers and they're not there, and all you have to do is look around this conference and it's not here. thank goodness. The only thing I do like is I don't have to wait in line to go into the ladies' room.
Yes.
For once, right? but you know, it'd be okay. I'd be all right with that problem if we had it too. I would take it. So, Julie, what do you look for in metadata for talent? Like what? 'Cause I'd like two things. Obviously on the diverse side, but just when you're hiring in general, what kind of talent do you look for?
Well, clearly we look for the skills that we need for a particular situation that we're hiring for. But you look for the same things I think that we all look for, which is potential, intelligence, ability to analyze and do problem solving, and also, you know, depending upon the role, breadth of experience and exposure to various technologies, but also industries and so forth. So again, it depends on what role you're hiring for, whether it's an entry level versus a more senior role or more leadership role. But typically you think of that person in the role when you're interviewing and how they will be able to contribute initially, as well as, you know, in the medium term and the longer term, and what they will bring in. So if you're not talking about diversity, those are the kinds of things that we look for.
I'm going to go off subject here a little bit, Mai-Lan, with you and ask you, have you thought about or at any point sort of given someone an opportunity, a young woman, a female on your team, an opportunity to do a job that they weren't 100% qualified for, but you saw something in them that you thought they can go do this job? Have you done that? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because I would turn that question out to the audience too, because all of the men in the room work with women and all of the women work with other women. And so you actually have to be very intentional about that and look for different opportunities. And it can be as small as not saying the answer that you know and turning to the other woman who hasn't said anything and say, what do you think? That is an incredibly small and important thing that you can do. Everybody can do that. So I think, you know, when we talk about giving those opportunities, they are as small but important as giving the floor to somebody. It is something like we have 3 of our women in the mentoring circle who are coming down here. They are speaking for the first time, so you better go and watch the session. And they had to take a lot of speaker training because this is a very new thing for them to get on stage and talk to hundreds of people. And that is an opportunity,
that's a huge opportunity
that they might not have gotten at this stage in their career, that we look for ways to do it. And then there's the technical opportunities, which is, you know, that person did a pretty good job, and if we pair them up with somebody who has a little bit more experience in that type of work, I think they could do that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, everybody here needs to be on the lookout for that potential. I remember when I was pretty early on in my career, I was 22 and I had platinum blonde hair that stood straight up, to be clear. And I had a couple people that that was when I worked at Microsoft. I was at Microsoft for 11 years, and there were a few people there. And what they gave me is exactly what you're talking about with the informal mentoring. They were 100% confident I could do anything. Yeah. And I really couldn't. I was I was very inexperienced, but they were confident I could, so I tried it, and I was all right, and I made some mistakes, and I got better. And it was because they dragged me along to those meetings, right? Or they, you know, pulled me into their office because they were having a brainstorming session, and I had no idea what was going on, but these incredibly smart people were thinking around me. And that's the sort of thing that everybody can do, and it just pays forward so much in people's lives, and you won't know it at the time.
I agree.
Oftentimes I'll be on a client calls and I'll pull people in to sit on them, the women in particular, to listen and be a fly on the wall so they can see how the interactions work. I really think that's so valuable, and it really does take a minute of your time to pull someone aside and give them a tip on something, and I just do it all day long.
That's
I will be doing
fantastic.
that, and it's really important. Whomever can do those kinds of things, it makes a big difference in people's lives. It really does.
Eva, what about you?
Actually, I have a personal story to share similar to Mai-Lan, which is like when I was first hired as the director of Big Data Platform 6 years ago. There wasn't really big data back then, right?
What's big data?
So they were brave enough to hire me to head
Now
up
you have
that
the
team.
Internet of Things. It's not even just that, right?
There wasn't like actually my team was the first team that moved, that completely started on AWS. So I need to learn the cloud, I need to learn.
What?
Yes, I need to
Can
learn
we
the
give her a
cloud.
hand, please?
We're the
I've
first
not
year.
heard that story. That's awesome. I
So
love that.
I need to build a team, I need to learn the cloud, I need to run Hadoop, I need to do everything, and here we are today, right?
Thank you for
So-
being a customer. I'll say too then.
So basically, I think to echo back the point is you need to give a chance to the women or men the same. You just give them a chance. If they have the potential, I mean, they could actually do what you want them to do.
I do like the concept, what you guys are talking about, learning by demonstrating and letting individuals sort of watch. And one of the things I do, my team, a lot of my team, I see them sitting here, I open up my leadership team meetings. And I want all my managers, my young managers to learn how I run a meeting, how I'm thinking about the business, how my other directors are thinking about the business. And to me, if you can model those kind of behaviors so they learn and listen and can pick up, I think it's really effective because I like open kind of management and leadership, because how do you teach and train if no one ever has the opportunity or exposure to see how leaders think and do and make decisions? So I would say to all of you in the audience, if you ever have an opportunity, and if you don't ask for that opportunity, to go in and sit in with your leaders so you get an opportunity to observe how they do decision making, how they think through and they problem solve, because if you admire someone, you want to try to emulate the way they do things. On the flip side, if you see also behaviors that you don't think are things you want to emulate, then you can say, I'm going to stay away from that one. But it's good. You got to have both. You've got to really see the upside or the potential downside, but the way you get that is through exposure. So don't be ever afraid to just ask, could I participate? Could I sit in? Could I listen in on this? Or, even ask yourself if you could help support something that maybe you don't even believe at the moment in time. You have the skills, but you have the burn in your belly to try it. And I think sometimes those things can really go a long way with managers and leaders. One of the things that I'd like to sort of ask each of you to talk about is if you could provide the audience even just one thing, because I didn't want to dive deep into this, but we do get asked this question a lot. And I think it's important to address it. As a woman in business, especially in technology today, that's a really fast-paced environment that is pretty much 24/7 for individuals like you in your role. You really don't, it's tough, right? I mean, it's good, but it's busy. How do you have one particular thing that you do as an individual to help you sort of stay sane? I don't want to call it work-life balance, but we're just, do you have something in particular that you do that really helps you stay balanced as an individual? Do you want to go first? I won't even.
Me?
Go ahead.
Sure. So luckily, because I'm in engineering, all the engineering team is in Los Gatos, so I don't need to travel. So because of that, so I could actually every day set aside a few hours that I don't check email. I know there's a recent article that talk about another women leader who does that, and I do exactly that. I set aside a few hours that I don't check email unless there is a production issue, and just do my mom duties for my son and things like that, and just spend time with him.
That's nice.
So that's what I do.
That's really good. That's you. What about you, Julie?
For me, I wouldn't say I've kept sane, but but I think what I really make an effort to do is prioritize and try not to be a perfectionist, and it's challenging. I pick the things that are most important, that will be most impactful, and I focus on those, and I become a perfectionist on those. The rest, I just do what I need to do. I've tried to do it all, and it doesn't work, and you really have to pick and choose, and you have to be conscious about it. Delegate and let the team roll. Train your leaders to delegate and let their team roll, and really pick the things that will be the most valuable for your success and for your team's success. That's what keeps me sane, and I constantly have to remind myself I cannot do everything. And for the longest time it was very disappointing, and I felt badly about it, that I knew there was a better way or a more comprehensive way or a more detailed way, or I could show myself in a better way. And I had to let go of that and just do the things at the top of the list that really make a difference. So the prioritization and keep being mindful of that continuously is very, very effective for me. That's the thing that has saved me.
Yeah, I think the mindfulness is very important. For me, that translates into what I call missions. So I'm very mission oriented. It's one of the reasons I love AWS and S3 is I think we have this very worthwhile mission for what we're doing in technology. But I also have these personal missions. And so an example of a personal mission is I have 3 kids, and I will make it a mission that I will go on at least 1 field trip for each kid per year and try to do 2. But it has to be a minimum of 1. And so this is actually really meaningful if you're a working mom to actually turn up at your kids' school and, you know, walk around a museum and eat lunch with them. This actually matters a ton to them because other moms turn up. And if their mom is never turning up, they know it, they feel it. So, you know, I do that. I actually set a mission to drive each kid, because, you know, I have 3 of them, each kid to their school at least once every week. And so I have to manage my calendar for it. And the reason why I do this is because I have boys. And they're ages 9, 11, and 13, and the parents in the room who have boys of this age know that you will sit down at dinner and you will ask them how their day is, and they will tell you it was fine. But because boys are like this, you put them in a car and you cannot shut them up because they don't have to look at you.
Yep.
They're just staring straight ahead and fiddling with the radio and doing all the stuff that boys do in a car, like moving around in their seat, but they're talking. So I have to create these missions. I have other ones for, you know, just my health.
What about kickboxing?
I know you see, I knew you were going to bring that. So I have some missions. I do Western-style boxing, and I also do a martial art form, a striking form called savate, which is a French form of kickboxing. And so I have missions about training for that because, you know, I am fairly recreationally competitive about that, which means I spar quite a lot. And if you're going to spar, I got to tell you, I'm 43 now, and the people I spar aren't getting any older. It doesn't seem like they're getting any older. So I have to have some missions about staying in shape.
That's good. I agree. I'm a big workout. I think you got to keep your mind healthy and your body healthy, and it's important for all of us to do that in this work environment. I think that was good. What is the other? We'll sort of do rapid fire here on this one. Can you sort of give one quick example for the audience that you think what they could do to be more inclusive of diversity, both men and women in the audience, something they could do in their work environment to make sure they're thinking about being more inclusive as a group in the work environment? We'll start with you.
I think we could all actually be a little bit more conscious about our environment. Make sure when you're in a meeting, make a point to, if you are the kind who like to talk, make sure you stop talking and ask for somebody else's opinion. Like, this is something that I do. Actually, I'm pretty inclusive, so usually other people talk more than I do. Yeah. But one thing you could do is to be very conscious and let other people speak so that, you know, you get everybody's opinions and the diverse opinion that you want.
That's a great idea. Julie?
I think it's more outside of the meeting environment, since you spoke to the inside the meeting environment. When you are at the social gatherings or before meetings, it's collaborating or talking with people that you wouldn't normally talk with. Usually when you bring groups together, do a social thing or have lunch before a big town hall, you'll see the cliques and the people of likeness stick together. I think getting out of your comfort zone or encouraging people to get out of their comfort zone and talk to and mingle with and learn about and understand the other people that you are working with is really important, because we have to sometimes force, you know, people to collaborate. You bring them into your staff meetings and you assign things and pair people up, and it's forced because ordinarily they won't gravitate towards that. So I think when there's social gatherings, trying to do that, trying to get together with people that you wouldn't ordinarily be drawn to.
And actually, you really pointed out something really specific, which I do. My teams come together and plan our quarterlies, and sometimes we usually try to do something really diverse. So you can put a set of people. In the early days at AWS, we were all separated, and I'd say we got to get members and managers, even diversity teams put together, because even getting teams, sometimes you can get, you know, a male, female, but even diversity of teams that don't work together.
Yes.
How do you even include them? And they can learn each other's missions, which they maybe hadn't even thought about before. Mai-Lan, what about you?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think it goes back to being intentional. So everybody in here is probably having some thoughts about the things that you could do. It's walking out of the room and telling yourself, again, this is a little bit mission oriented, but telling yourself you're going to do this one time a day. You're going to recognize the potential in the person around you or the people around you, and you're going to do one action a day. And if one action a day is too hard, you can do one a week, as long as you are working towards one a day. And that, again, can be a small action or a large action, but if you make that your mission, it will stop being a mission and it will just start being how you operate, and you will be surprised how many people will pick up on that and either benefit from it or emulate it.
So thank you, ladies, for your time. Thank you to the audience. And we're going to end, I want to tell you two quick things. In April, in May, we launched AWS Educate, which is a program near and dear to everybody at Amazon Web Services' heart. And AWS Educate is trying to create lifelong learners of cloud computing, and really to create a diverse pipeline of all kinds of learners in computer science. And the program we're starting is at universities, where we're giving free credits and training for professors, and they're crowdsourcing their classroom work that they're doing on teaching cloud and sharing it around the world. So we've launched this. We have about 1,000 professors now. We're getting more and more students. So we're working on that, and you'll continue to see us roll that out to try to create more and more. The other thing we're working to support is girls' coding clubs on campuses to try to create more women doing coding. I was just in Brussels, and I had a really great opportunity to meet two amazing women who started a coding club in Brussels. And the way they got young women ages 7 to 16 in is they told them they were going to design fashion. Well, they are designing fashion through coding. And when you go in, it's the coolest little club, and you see the girls work, and these girls are amazing, and they've got their computers open and they're doing coding, and they've gotten so motivated because they're working together on something that they're really problem solving. So I would encourage all of us to think of ways, any one little single way through your school programs, get people excited. But what we have for you today, as you leave, we have a new sticker that is your hashtag #SmartIsBeautiful. I encourage you to put it on your laptop or wherever and continue to think through. And I just really would love to recruit all of you to work within your specter to try to get young girls really excited about technology. Their moms and dads, and get them excited about getting their girls, encouraging them to be in the science and the technology realm, because they can do it. We need that. And what does that create? It creates a diverse work environment that we need, and we need that pipeline, because we can't recruit and retain if there's not the people to recruit and retain. So we all have to start earlier. So, something that will outlive all of us here in this room is what we need to be creating. So we really appreciate you being here. We want your feedback. We want to know if this was valuable to you. Please go to the next session where you're going to learn how to create a circle. But give us the feedback and tell us what more you would like to have here at reInvent, so we can continue to create programs that are really valuable for women and men who want to learn about how do they have a more diverse work environment. So thank you all so much,
Thank you,
and thank you for coming to reInvent.